2 games left in the Stars season. 2 days left. A little home and home back-to-backer. Mike Heika joining us to talk some hockey now here on 105.3 The Fan. And a good afternoon, sir. Thank you so much for your time. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you guys?
We're doing good. How important is it to win this division here in these last couple of days in the big picture of trying to do everything you want to in the postseason?
Well, I mean, obviously they've only won once in the last 16 years, so just having that banner is nice if they could pull it off. About a week ago, I would have thought it was a lot more important just because facing Seattle would be better than facing Minnesota. But Minnesota seems to, like, they suffered some injuries last night. They're kind of trending in not the right direction. And all that can change, obviously, before the playoffs start. But at this point, I don't think playing Minnesota, especially if you're hosting them, is the worst thing in the world. Playing Seattle might be a little bit better, but it's almost like 50-50 right now. If they don't get the division championship, as long as they're playing well and they go into the playoffs with things moving in the right direction, and I think they're fine.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the possible 2 playoff matchups that they'll have, Mike. When you look at both those teams, the physicality in which they play with, is there a matchup that you think would be better for the Stars? I mean, what areas would they be in fear of possibly an early exit against either of those teams?
Well, I think Minnesota, 1, has experience. 2, they would be very motivated just because of the rivalry between Minnesota and Dallas because, quote unquote, we stole their team. So the fans would definitely get behind that. And I think that would influence the players as well. Seattle has no experience, so that I think is a helpful thing just because it's going to be, new for them. So in that regard, I do think, Seattle would be better. As far as actual physicality and everything, Dallas is I shouldn't say weird, very interesting this year in that Pete DeBoer does not really tailor his game to the opposition. He wants to roll 4 lines. He wants to play all 3 D pairs. He wants to play, quote unquote, the Dallas Stars game and not really worry about what the other team is doing. And that's really worked for him pretty well this year. So every time you talk to them, they're like, well, we need to do this we need to do that. And we're not really worried about what the other team's doing. Now, of course, that's easy in a 82-game season where it's a different opponent every night. Now, when you play a team, every other night for 7 games, you do have to match up better. But it's been weird because he doesn't really try to match his lines versus the other lines or his D pair versus the other D pair. They really are trying to balance everything out and worrying about how they play.
Mike, if the Stars end up going on a run here, what are going to be some of the reasons why?
Well, the power play I was just looking at today is really good. The penalty kill is really good. They potentially, if Mason Marchment comes back, he's supposed to play one of these last 2 games, and then he is the quote-unquote last player who's been hurt. If he can come in, get up to speed, they would have 3 forward lines that are all pretty talented. So obviously the top line is one of the best in the league with Robertson, Hintz, and Pavelski. The second line has really stepped up with Ben, Johnston, and now Dadonov. And then the third line, if it's Domi, Sagan, and Marchment, and that's a really good third line. And I think we've seen historically in the playoffs that teams that have that, you can get some goals out of their third line. It really can swing a series. So I think that's a big one. And then to me, the big key is Jake Oettinger. He is, in my opinion, the best goalie in the Western Conference. He did what he did in the playoffs last year. He seems to love the spotlight. And even though he's only 24, I definitely think he's ready for this moment. So those 2 things. I think they have 3 great forward lines potentially, and then Jake Oettinger could be the best goalie in the West.
So traditionally, Mike, the goaltending is really what carries you through this playoffs. If you were just to take a crystal ball and then look ahead, I'm always going to try and look ahead here, but in like the conference, in the finals and the Stanley Cup, all these teams look stacked in the East. Is Oettinger the type of guy that can stand up to the playoff series that you're going to have to win against that potential team in the East? Well, the hope would be that because they would have to win 3 rounds to get there,
that he would definitely be that goalie by that time. When you look at what he did against Calgary last year, particularly in Game 7, he was spectacular. I mean, there are old-time hockey experts who are saying it was one of the best playoff goaltending performances they've ever seen in Game 7. So he has that potential. Now, let's say they play Minnesota, okay? You play Minnesota, you got to get through that. He's from Minnesota. I think there'll be a lot of emotion in that series. If he can handle that, now, boom, you probably get Colorado. Well, that's going to be quite a hurdle to get over. If he gets over that hurdle, then it's, Vegas or one of the teams from the Pacific, which might actually even be a little bit easier than Minnesota and Colorado right now, or especially Colorado. So the point being is that by the time he gets to whoever that team may be, and if it's Boston, they're pretty much flawless this year, he would be ready for that, I think. It's a process, and he is just 24, and he does just have one playoff series under his belt. So, yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of things that can happen. It's funny, the other thing about goalies is we've seen some young goalies who, just tear it apart their rookie year, and then the next season or the season after that, they, have their hiccups. They have some, mental hurdles they have to overcome. So he's still got a lot in his career that he has to, manage. But, yeah, I definitely think if he gets to the Stanley Cup final, he'll be in a pretty good place.
It's Mike Heika at DallasStars.com with us here. What meaning do you give the recent 4-game winning streak? Can we apply that? Do you need to play great in these next two to feel confident going in that they're maybe at the top of their game?
I think it's helpful. They've played some teams that are very beatable. Arizona, they played really well. The Colorado game, the first period was fantastic, and then they just kind of ran out of gas. And then they played some teams recently, Detroit and now St. Louis, where these are teams you should beat, Nashville. So it's hard to say that this is really preparing them, but at the same point in time, it's a lot better than losing. Like Pittsburgh last night had to go beat Chicago. It's not a very good team, and they lost. And that's a tough thing to swallow. Now, they'll always tell you once the playoff starts, all that stuff just goes out the window. But I do think it's important. And then the other thing I think is important is getting things in order. They've recently brought up Thomas Harley, and that's kind of changed their D pair. They moved Suter up to play with Heiskanen, which I know a lot of fans don't like that. But now Harley and Miller are a really good third pair. And like I go back to Pete wanting to spread the minutes out, roll the D pairs, and not really worry about the matchup. Well, having Harley and Miller play well together, I mean, you're doing pretty good because that's, 17, 18 minutes of your time on defense. And if you can roll those D pairs, that's important. So as we go through all this, and these two games are important, I think that's what they're looking at. They keep focusing on themselves. And, I know that's boring sometimes, but it really is a smart way to do this. And Pete, I'm just getting to know him this year and getting ready for the playoffs and everything. He's really smart, really calculated, very patient. You just look at things and say, this is how you're supposed to do it. And then you look at the numbers and back that up. Like I said, I think they're what are they, 7th in goals against, or 7th in scoring, 9th in goals against, 3rd in penalty kill, 6th in power play. I mean, this is a really good team from what they were last year. They were nowhere close to these numbers last year. And so you add guys like Dadonov and Domi and hopefully get Marchment back in the lineup. And that's what's important to them. So, yes, you want to be winning these games, and they have, but you also want everything to be just flowing the right way.
Jason Robertson is a guy who just keeps getting better and better. How special is the season that Robo's had?
Oh, it's amazing. What's funny about him is, one, he's a little bit goofy, which is kind of fun. And two, the way he plays the game is more smart than skilled. And, I hate to say he doesn't have skill because he definitely does. He's a big guy. I mean, a lot of people think he's smaller, but he's really not. He's a big body. He can handle himself in scrums. He can win battles. But it's just the way he shoots the puck is unique and awkward and fantastic all at the same time. I think the goal that broke Modano's point record in Arizona is the best example. So you're coming down to the end of the period. He's got the puck on his stick. He kind of doesn't know what he wants to do, and he just makes something up. He kind of just hesitates and then just flings it at the net, and boom, it goes in. Because, if he doesn't know what he's doing, then certainly the opposition doesn't know what he's doing. And then you mix all that with when the team needs a big goal in overtime, or they need a big goal, at a key moment, he also makes those spectacular plays. I mean, highlight reel plays. So yeah, you get 100 points, you're probably doing something right. And the fact that he's 23, he is a point. That's another one. So you look at Jamie Benn, or you look at Tyler Seguin, or even Modano probably was closer to this, but that was a few years back and different time. Jason Robertson scores more than a point a game for the first 200, games of his career. And that's pretty rare.
Yeah.
Jamie Benn didn't do that. He was a 40-point guy in his first season. Tyler Seguin didn't do that. He was a 35-point guy in his first season. Jason Robertson, since he's touched the NHL ice, is a point-a-game player. And, that's impressive. And he's done it for 3 years, and he, clearly looks like he's going to keep doing it for, 10, 15 more years.
Your hockey knowledge is impressive as well. Thank you so much for your time. Mike Heika, senior writer, DallasStars.com. Salute to you, sir.
Thank you, guys.